The readings for today are obviously about charity, and charity is a major theme for Lent. And when we think of Lent, we think of sacrifice and self-denial, things we're going to give up. But we can get caught up perhaps in the those kind of external sacrifices, which can sometimes be easier than practicing charity. So the Church is reminding us that charity comes first, even before the things we give up, which can again be easier sometimes than forgiving your neighbor or loving your enemies, or being kind and patient with those who are annoying, or being charitable to your family members, your husband or your wife or your brother and sister. These things can be much more difficult than things that we may want to give up. So, of course, charity is much more important, and so the Church is reminding us through these readings. Of the first reading, you shall not steal, you shall not lie and speak falsely to one another, you shall not defraud and rob your neighbor, you shall not withhold overnight the wages of your day labor, you shall not act dishonestly in rendering judgment, you shall not bear hatred for your brother in your heart, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, I am the Lord. And then, of course, the corporal works of mercy that Jesus says that this is conditional for our salvation. If we take care of the poor and we welcome the stranger and give food to the hungry and drink to the thirsty, and clothe the naked and visit those who are in prison or who are ill. These are things we have to do for our salvation. In a nutshell, we're saying we have to be charitable to our neighbor to be saved. And this is an underlining theme for Lent, but also a practice for Lent, that we have to look to the needs of our neighbor. And perhaps today it's more complicated because we live in a sort of welfare states in Europe, and becoming more and more the way here in America, where bureaucrats are taking care of the poor or giving money to the poor, and it's becoming more and more of a distant thing to practice charity. And I don't need to think so much about my neighbor anymore because they can just go to the welfare office and all their needs will be met. No, we still have to think about our neighbor, think about the needs of our neighbor, because the government is not going to take care of every need, and we certainly need to change the government policies to make it more local, make it more faith-based, as was tried and is tried, I think, even today in the governments, some of the governments, where those who are practicing charity because of love of God and because of their faith, that's where the real charity is being done, and that certainly has to be promoted more and more, even in our day, even though the government can help in some ways, but it shouldn't be too distant. It should be on a local level, where personal contact is being done and personal charity is being exercised and practiced. And today, as probably in every day, we have to be careful of those things that make us be uncharitable. And we can. In the older days, there was racism for your nationality or your color or your religion, and there's kind of sort of masked racism that can be even here in our day today. We have groups that we still have the religions. We have, even in religious life, we can be maybe a little racist against our fellow religionists, our fellow Franciscans, or those who may be secular priests who may be a little discriminating against the religious and religious to them. And the Democrats are against the Republicans against the Democrats, and traditionalists against the modernists and modernists against traditionalists, or other ways. We can label people conservative, liberal, and if they fit into this category and they do all these things that are reprehensible or we don't like in most cases, we can use that as an excuse to be uncharitable. But we have to love our enemies, even those who are bad. But we need to be charitable to everyone. We can't put people in boxes and label them and then use that as an excuse to think unkindly of them or act unkindly with them. We always have to practice charity, and we can use that rule of St. Augustine that in certain things we should be united, in doubtful things we should be practice liberty, and in all things we should practice charity. So charity is the buzzword for Lent, the buzzword for every time, of course. And so let us look for the needs of our neighbor, seek out to be charitable to our neighbor, starting from our home, as Mother Teresa would always recommend to those. You go home and smile at your wife, smile at your husband, and from there, practice charity in the home even to our enemies, to everyone, and look for the needs of our neighbor. Go outside yourself, outside your home, and look for the needs, or else we can be in the category of Dives and Lazarus. Dives, who had Lazarus at his gates, and he was suffering there at his gates and died and went to the bosom of Abraham, and Dives died, and perhaps, or didn't even know that Lazarus was there. At least the parable doesn't say that he knew that he was there, because he didn't care enough to go out looking for those who he could help, and he had the means to help them. So we have to look for the needs of our neighbor, and this is a special concentration that we make during Lent. So let us practice that charity in every form we can think of.